Text 083 4100 102. This is The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
It has a 2,000-page script. It used motion capture techniques similar to those behind Avatar, and the actors involved were working on it for more than 6 months. What movie are we talking about? Well, it isn't a movie. It's a new game called Heavy Rain, which is available on PlayStation, and which, by some accounts, has just transformed gaming. Adrian Meckler of the Sunday Business Post, I know you've played it twice. What do you make of it?
Well, I finished it twice. It's an extraordinary game, Matt. I mean, you rightly compare it to a film. It has all the attributes of a very, very serious thriller. In making this game, what the developers did was to create a narrative and present the game like it was a film. There's actually a limited amount of action in it. So what you're really doing is following 4 characters. What you're doing is you're following a script and you're following a plot as it progresses. It's very, very slow to start with. I've heard a lot of people complaining that there isn't enough action, not enough confrontation, not enough fights. But it really takes advantage of what I would regard as the graphical superiority of the PlayStation 3 over its rivals, over the likes of the Xbox 360 and the Wii, and gives you what is just an extraordinary playing experience.
Okay, but what do you play if you're not involved in shooting and explosions and the rest of it?
You play, basically, it revolves around murders and killings, and there are 4 characters who you can control. Now, you basically follow them to the conclusion of the story. There are a number of different endings that you can have in the story. You can choose whether or not to whether the characters live or die, but there's never a game over. The game just keeps playing until the script resolves itself. I played it twice, and I'm not going to give anything away, but both endings were really, really different.
Danny O'Dwyer is with us as well, another games addict. How are you, Danny?
Not too bad. I'm enjoying Adrian talking about the game because it's almost like Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense. You want to talk about the game and you want to talk it up, but you don't want to give away parts of the plot because it's the most important part. And I guess the reason that is because the game is almost entirely plot-based. The action that exists only is there to drive the story forward. It's not a game based on, traditional mechanics of platforming or shooting. And in that respect, it's very different. And I think what's important about this game is that although it's a fantastic experience, I don't think it's for everybody. But I do think that people that would enjoy this game would be slightly older and slightly more into their movies and indeed into their drama on television as well.
So is it a more intellectual, emotional thing rather than just sort of shoot-'em-up games that perhaps we've become used to?
It's certainly more emotional. It's scene by scene. You can see how they've paced it. Now, I'm not an expert on television or film, but you can see the pacing of this game is very different to most modern games, which seem to up the ante up until the final conclusion, which is almost like a crescendo. This one takes its time, and I haven't actually completed it yet. I'm still maybe 3/4 of the way through, but you can see that so much of the time in the game is spent developing characters rather than just getting you to learn the game better. Most games start off basic, and then by the end you've mastered the controls, whereas really Heavy Rain isn't interested in how good you are at the game. It's more interested in the decisions you make when you're playing it.
Interesting to pick up on a point there that Danny makes. I mean, quite rightly says it's not for everyone, yet in the first week it's said to have sold 500,000 units, 100,000 in the UK alone. So, and that's €50 a pop or so. So they reckon it'll sell up to 2 million units by Christmas this year, which will put it in probably the top 3 or top 4. I mean, you're talking serious Hollywood box office at that point.
But Danny, how much control do you have over what happens, given that it all has to be in there in the game, it has been all programmed? Are there all sorts of multiple options that you can take as you go through the game to really make it a rich experience for you?
Well, essentially, in a lot of modern games, what you have is it's almost like a family tree. You have maybe 2 or 3 decisions, and it splits the game this way. And then, traditionally, in a lot of games, these decisions really only come down to maybe 2 or 3 different endings. What's interesting in Heavy Rain is that small decisions, and not even ones that are sort of highlighted quite obviously, impact the game dramatically. For one, it's possible that you can lose control of one of the characters. They might die. This can happen, and then the story has to change, and dramatically so. And I've been talking to some people who've been tiptoeing around it because it is one of these games you don't want to spoil. But I've heard of people with dramatically different, not even endings to the game, but quite early in the game, they've already gone on a completely different tangent.
Does this sound to Adrian a little bit like a sort of a games version, if you could imagine yourself having some control of how 24 or Lost works out on television?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I would equate it a little bit more to The Wire than 24. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the essential point is that this is played out much more like a mini-series, like a film, than it is actually a computer game.
And Danny, how long would you spend on a game?
I've been told from people that you're talking between 9 and 10 hours per play session. But of course, what's important about modern games is that replayability is high, and a lot of games have multiplayer components and add-on packs and whatnot. Now, Heavy Rain doesn't have multiplayer, and the chances are it's not going to have many add-on packs. So what's important about it is that it's got heavy replayability, because, as Adrian says, the game can change completely different based on your decisions. So it'll be interesting once I've completed, and he's obviously already experienced this, where when I've completed the game, the second time I go around, just mix it up and enjoy the experience all over again. And what's great about it is that the narrative in the game and also the dialogue is so extraordinarily fun to just sit and watch, even not to play, that it's a great game that I can definitely see myself playing 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, it's getting absolutely rave reviews. The Observer saying one of the best games ever made. And I was mentioning at the start about, 2,000-page script, 6 months with the actors, whereas a movie apparently is 120 pages of script, about 3 months to shoot.
Yeah.
But Adrian, is this going to be the future? Are these games going to outdo movies? Or will there still be a desire of people to sit down and have it there in front of them, rather than having to participate as you do in this game?
Well, that's a very good point. And what this game does is it marries the best type of passive experience that you get with a fantastic film, where you're not actually controlling anything, but you're just impressed at every stage. That's what Heavy Rain does. It marries that with an interactive element. There used to be a game in the late 80s called Dragon's Lair in the arcade. It was a kind of a cartoon-based game, and you were able to control the cartoon character based on what button you pushed. But it was a cheap and a kind of a tawdry way of trying to marry a really good kind of graphical animated experience with interactivity. This gives you the best of both, essentially, and it's indicative of other games. There are a lot of games that are being made like this now for people who are more sophisticated.
Is it only available on PlayStation?
Yes, it is. It's PlayStation 3.
Is it likely to be on the Wii now? Because if it wasn't going to come to the Wii, this is the type of thing that might persuade me to finally invest in a PlayStation.
This isn't the type of game that you'll find on the Nintendo Wii. You'll never find it on the Wii, no. Okay.
Of course, PlayStations have a problem at the moment, Danny, don't they? Some sort of virus or something, is there?
They do. This is great. It reminded me of the Millennium Bug of days past. Basically, what happened was yesterday, any PlayStation 3 that a lot of people refer to as the fat console, basically not the slimline version that came out at the end of last year, any of those consoles that were turned on yesterday essentially became inoperable. They couldn't run any games, or you couldn't use any content you downloaded, like maybe a downloadable game or a film. And essentially the reason was because they had it programmed in the older versions that 2010 was a leap year. So when it hit March 1st, the system just had a bit of a hiccup and didn't understand what was going on and locked itself out.
And are they all right today?
It's okay today. That's the important thing, is to tell people, in case they turned on their PlayStations yesterday and nothing worked, turn
it's
it on
not broken.
today.
It'll work today.
You may have to change the date. That's the only thing, but it'll definitely work today.
Okay. Something else I want to ask you about, Adrian Weckler, while you're here. The iPhone, which I still haven't got around to upgrading my original iPhone to the 3GS, but I'll have a choice soon, between O2 and Vodafone. What's Vodafone offering? Vodafone
offering it's actually not that different. They came out today and announced their pricing and the specs, more or less the specs on the packages. In other words, how much they would allow you to surf the internet, etc., per month. They're coming in a little bit cheaper than O2's current offering. It'll start at €35 per month for your bill, and it'll if you choose a higher monthly bill, you'll be able to get it for free. One restriction that they have said, they've been quite open about, is that you will only be able to use up to 2 gigabytes of information, of internet browsing or data per month. It's 2,000 megabytes. That's not a lot for somebody who uses the phone for the internet a lot. But what they will say is that if you want to download a song or apps or that kind of thing, that you are more likely to go home and use your Wi-Fi wireless internet network and not over the cellular network. So they think it's going to be enough. Okay, we'll leave it there. Adrian Weckler from the Sunday Business Post and Danny O'Dwyer, one of our gaming experts. Thank you both very much for joining us on the programme. 083 4100 102. Actually, I have a question for Adrian. I forgot. How much does this Heavy Rain cost? €50. €50. That's at the higher end. So thank you very much. Back after this.
Last Word with the Irish Times. 150 years of leading coverage, comment, interviews and analysis of the business world.